Cormac's bare feet hit gravel hard as he sprinted down Maple Street, lungs burning, tears blurring his vision. Behind him, 3 county vehicles idled in his driveway like mechanical vultures. Inspector Thane Hollis had given his grandmother Nola 10 minutes to produce Gunner, 10 minutes before they'd enter by force. The Iron Barrel Tavern appeared ahead, squat and weathered, motorcycles gleaming in October sun. Cormac had walked past this place 100 times, always averting his eyes from the leather-clad men his teachers whispered about. But desperation redraws the lines between safe and dangerous. He shoved through the heavy door. Conversation died. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward him. The smell hit. Motor oil, cigarette smoke, leather. "Please," Cormac gasped. "They're at my house. They're going to take my dog. He was my dad's service dog. Dad died in a fire last year and Gunner's all I—" His words dissolved into sobs, the raw animal terror of losing the only anchor left in a tilting world. A tall man at the bar set down his glass, weathered face, maybe 45, with a vest bearing patches Cormac didn't understand, stitched across his chest. "Reeve." "Slow down, kid," Reeve said gently. "Who's taking your dog?" "Inspector Hollis. He says Gunner's dangerous. He's not. He helps me when I can't breathe right, when the dreams get bad. But Hollis has a court order, and my grandma tried to tell him about the service paperwork, but he wouldn't listen, and—" "Thane Hollis?" A barrel-chested biker with grey beard spoke up. "That corrupt son of a—" "Easy, Brick." Reeve held up a hand. "This the same Hollis who's been red-tagging properties along Hemlock Ridge. If you're finding this story right now, wherever you are, subscribe to this channel and let's walk this road together." "Don't know," Cormac whispered. "I just know he's at my house, and in 10 minutes he's taking Gunner away." Something shifted in the room. These men knew Hollis. They knew what he was. "What's your name, kid?" "Cormac. Cormac Brennan." "Brennan?" A woman near the pool table straightened, medical caduceus patch on her jacket. "Declan Brennan's boy? You knew my dad? Your father pulled my brother from a burning duplex in 2019, carried him down 3 flights with his back on fire." "Your dad was a hero, Cormac." Reeve nodded slowly. "All right, Cormac Brennan, you came to the right place. Brick, call the brothers. Every bike we've got, rolling in 5 minutes." He looked down at the boy. "We're going to have a conversation with Inspector Hollis, and nobody's taking your dog." Outside, the first Harley roared to life, then another. By the time Cormac climbed onto Reeve's bike, 17 motorcycles formed a convoy stretching down the block. Chrome caught afternoon light like drawn swords. As they turned onto Maple Street, Cormac thought of something his father used to say. Sometimes people have to protect each other from the law. 3 county vehicles still sat in his driveway, but now 17 Harleys pulled up behind them, engines cutting in unison. Thane Hollis stood on the porch, his face draining of color as he turned to see what had arrived. Reeve dismounted slowly. "Inspector Hollis, heard you were having a problem with a service animal." Hollis recovered quickly. "This is county business. You need to clear out before I call—" "Before you call who?" Reeve interrupted. "Sheriff Morrison. Pretty sure he'd be interested why you're seizing a registered PTSD service dog from a minor without proper cause. Or maybe Judge Fenway, the one who signed your bogus court order?" "You're interfering with—" "I'm standing on a public street, observing. First Amendment, Inspector. Even outlaws know the Constitution." The standoff held for 30 seconds. Then Hollis smiled, that cold, political smile that had worked on every frightened homeowner. "You people don't scare me. I've got the law on my side." Reeve stepped closer. "Let me tell you about the law, Inspector. My club has ridden these roads 40 years. We know every family, every business, every piece of dirt, and we know what you've been doing, the foreclosures, the code violations that appear from nowhere, the properties that get seized and somehow end up in your brother-in-law's development company." Hollis's smile faltered. "So here's how this works," Reeve continued. "You're going to walk back to your vehicle. Tell your deputies this was a false report. Leave this family alone, because if you don't, I'll make sure every property owner you've screwed over in 5 years hears about Declan Brennan's son, and how you tried to take his dead father's service dog." Hollis looked past Reeve at 17 bikers, then at neighbors emerging from houses. His calculation was visible. He chose retreat. "This isn't over," Hollis muttered. "Actually, it is. Because tomorrow, we're filing a formal complaint with the state licensing board." The county vehicles pulled away 10 minutes later. Cormac stood in his yard, arms around Gunner, feeling the dog's steady heartbeat. Nola emerged, eyes wet. "Thank you. Lord above, thank you." Reeve knelt beside Cormac. "You did good, kid. Took guts to ask for help. Is he really gone?" "He'll try again. But you're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, you've got 17 brothers watching your back." "There's something else," Nola said quietly. "Something Declan told me before he died. He said if anyone ever came for the house, I needed to look under the oak tree. He said there was insurance buried there." Reeve straightened. "Insurance." He kept saying it those last weeks. "Make sure Cormac knows about the insurance under the oak." I thought he meant papers, but now... The bikers exchanged glances. Brick moved toward his saddlebag, pulling out a shovel. Only one way to find out. As the sun descended, 7 men began digging beneath the oak tree. Gunner sat alert, ears forward, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. 3 feet down, the shovel hit metal. Not wood, not stone, metal. The box emerged like a confession, military grade, scratched but intact. Across the top, "For Cormac, when the time comes." Gunner whined, a low, urgent sound. The dog pawed at the box, then looked at Cormac with knowing eyes. "He remembers," Nola whispered. "Gunner was there when Declan buried this. 15 minutes with bolt cutters snapped the rusted locks. Inside, wrapped in waterproof plastic, a thumb drive, a leather journal, and a sealed envelope. Reeve read the envelope. His expression shifted from confusion to cold fury. "It's a map. Every property in Ridgemont foreclosed, red-tagged or seized in 10 years. And next to each address, the same 3 names: Thane Hollis, Judge Marcus Fenway, County Commissioner Dalton Webb." "What does that mean?" Cormac asked. "It means your father figured something out, something worth killing for." Nola's hand went to her mouth. "No, Declan died in an accident. The warehouse did it?" Reeve held up the journal. "According to this, your husband spent 3 months investigating a corruption ring. Hollis cited properties for made-up violations. When owners couldn't pay fixes, Fenway fast-tracked foreclosures. Webb's company bought land at auction for pennies, flipped it for 10 times the price. Declan documented 23 properties. He was going to the FBI the day he died." Cormac felt the world tilt. "You're saying someone. I'm saying the timing's suspicious, and this house was next on their list. That's why Hollis came today. Not for Gunner, for the land." They moved inside. The thumb drive contained hundreds of folders, photos of fabricated damage reports, audio files of conversations between Hollis and Fenway, bank records showing money flowing to offshore accounts. At the bottom, a video labeled "Final Message." Declan Brennan's face filled the screen, tired but resolute. Timestamp: 2 days before the warehouse fire. Gunner visible in the passenger seat. "If you're watching this, I'm gone, and someone needs to know the truth. My name is Declan Brennan, firefighter for Ridgemont County. I've uncovered systematic conspiracy to steal land from working families. The evidence is on this drive. I'm leaving this for my son because he deserves to grow up where justice means something." He paused. "To whoever finds this, protect my boy, protect our home, and make these bastards pay." The video ended. Nola wept quietly. Cormac gripped the table edge. His father's face burned into his vision. This wasn't accident. This was murder. We go to state police, Brick said. Tonight. With what? Reeve countered. Evidence collected by a dead man? No chain of custody. Hollis will claim it's fabricated. So what do? We go to the people. Every family on this list. We contact them, show them what Declan found, organize. When we have enough voices, we go to press, State Attorney General, FBI. Make so much noise Hollis can't hide. That'll take time. Then we take time. But first we protect this house. Hollis saw us digging. He's coming back. Nazidis, Cormac spoke, voice small but steady. My dad knew he might die. That's why he buried this. Trained gunner to lead someone here. He was protecting me after he was gone. Reeve knelt beside him. Your father was a good man. He knew some fights are worth dying for, and some truths worth living for. You're that truth. Will you help me finish what he started? Kid, I wouldn't be here otherwise. Reeve stood, addressing the room. Brick, coordinate with other chapters. Get me sympathetic lawyers. Lydia, contact that journalist from Boise. We've got something bigger. And me? Cormac asked. Take care of your grandmother. And Gunner. That dog is a witness. He was with your father. He trusts you. That trust will matter when this gets ugly. Outside, engines rumbled as members dispersed, some to watch the house, others to begin investigation. Cormac walked to the window, Gunner pressed against his leg, watching leather-clad figures move with purpose. Do you think Dad knew, he asked Nola, that they'd try to take the house? I think your father knew evil doesn't stop on its own. It has to be stopped. He left you the tools, the truth, because he believed you'd be strong enough when the time came. I'm just 11. So was David when he faced Goliath. She kissed his head. Your father gave you a choice. Let this bury you, or let it build you. Through the window, Reeve mounted his Harley. Before starting the engine, he looked back and raised 2 fingers, a promise. Then chrome caught sunlight as the convoy left. Cormac raised his hand in return, understanding his life had divided into before and after. Before the oak tree gave up secrets, and after he learned his father's death was murder that wouldn't go unpunished. What happens now? Gunner pressed harder against his leg. We go forward. We fight. We finish what your father started. The war for Ridgemont County had begun. The iron barrel transformed into war room over 72 hours. Maps covered walls, each red dot representing a property on Declan's list. Bikers who worked construction, real estate, county maintenance fed information into a growing database. Phone calls went to families who'd lost homes. Reeve coordinated like a general. We need testimonials, video statements from everyone willing. Brick, how many families contacted? 14, 9 willing to talk, 3 terrified, 2 told us to hell. The scared ones will come around. Focus on the 9. Lydia approached with a laptop. The journalist from Boise, Kendra Vasquez, she's interested. Says she's heard rumors about Hollis for years but could never get anyone on record. She wants to meet tomorrow. Set it up. Somewhere public. 3 brothers with her at all times. Cormac sat in the corner with Gunner, watching organized chaos. His grandmother had let him observe. This was his fight too. He'd brought his father's journal, reading entries each night, learning Declan had been more than a firefighter. He'd been an investigator of corruption. One entry stuck with him. Cormac asked why bad people don't get caught. I said because good people get tired, but that's a lie. They don't get caught because good people get scared. Scared of losing what little they have. I won't be scared, and I pray my son never learns to be. You doing okay? Lydia crouched beside him. I keep thinking about what Dad wrote, about being scared. Are you scared? Yeah, but also angry. Anger's just fear with its fists up. It's what you do with it that matters. Your dad turned anger into action, evidence, documentation, truth. A commotion at the door interrupted. A thin, weathered man in his 60s entered, followed by a younger woman holding a file box. Reeve intercepted. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for whoever's investigating Thane Hollis. Name's Vernon Trask. That son of a bitch stole my garage. 40 years I ran that business. Auto repair, honest work. Then Hollis shows up, says my septic system is contaminating groundwater, orders me to fix it for 80,000 or close down. I didn't have 80,000. Lost everything in foreclosure 6 months later. And the septic system never was contaminating anything. Had it inspected after, clean as a whistle. But by then, Judge Fenway had signed the order. My garage is now a luxury dealership owned by Webb Development." The woman set down the box. "I'm Vernon's daughter, Claire. We've got documentation. False inspection report, foreclosure notice, sale record showing Webb bought it for 12,000, sold it 2 months later for 400,000. We've been fighting this 3 years, but every lawyer gets threatened or bought out." Reeve exchanged glances with Brick. "You're number 7 on Declan Brennan's list." Vernon's eyes widened. "Declan, the firefighter? I heard he died in that warehouse fire." "He did, but not before documenting everything Hollis did to people like you. We've got evidence on 23 properties. Yours is one." Claire's hands shook. "If you can use this, take it all. My dad worked himself half to death. It was supposed to be my inheritance. Hollis took that. He needs to pay." "He will, but we need you on record. Video testimony." Vernon straightened. "I'll do more than that. I'll stand in front of anyone, judge, jury, television. That man destroyed my life. If there's a chance to make him answer, I'm in." Over the next hours, 3 more families arrived. Each brought documentation. Each brought rage preserved through years of legal defeats. Each brought pieces of a puzzle revealing not just corruption, but systematic theft. By midnight, Reeve had 15 testimonials recorded, 48 properties documented, and a pattern so clear even compromised courts couldn't ignore it. He called Kendra Vasquez. "We're ready. How fast can you move?" "Preliminary story in 3 days, but I need protection for sources." He already knows something's happening. Question is whether he knows how much. Answer is no, he doesn't. He thinks this is about one property, one dog, one family. He doesn't realize we've got 15 families ready to testify. Then we move fast. I'll coordinate with State Attorney General's office, get them everything before the story drops. Reeve hung up and addressed the room. "This is happening. Story runs in 3 days. That gives us 72 hours to ensure every family is safe, every piece of evidence backed up in multiple locations. Brick, rotating watches on the Brennan house and Vernon's place. Hollis will panic when this breaks." Cormac stood. "Can I say something?" The room quieted. "My dad spent 3 months gathering this evidence. He knew it was dangerous, but he did it anyway because he believed truth was stronger than corruption. I don't know much about justice or the law, but I know my dad would want everyone here to be careful. He wouldn't want anyone else to die for this." Vernon walked over, placed a weathered hand on Cormac's shoulder. "Your father was brave, son, but here's what he understood. Sometimes the only way to protect people you love is to fight those who'd hurt them. We're all in danger already, from debt, from homelessness, from corrupt systems. Your dad didn't create that danger, he just decided to name it. And now we finish what he started," Claire added. The room murmured agreement. Reeve raised his glass. "To Declan Brennan, and to every person told to shut up and accept injustice." "To Declan," the room echoed. "And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you." As the gathering dispersed, Cormac sat on the tavern's back steps with Gunnar. October air carried a bite. Lydia joined him. "Holding up? I keep wondering if Dad knew when he buried that box that he wasn't coming home. Maybe. Or maybe he hoped he'd dig it up himself someday. But that's courage. Not knowing you'll win, deciding the fight matters whether you do or not. The fire that killed him, was it them? I think your father asked dangerous questions in a town that profits from silence. Whether they lit the match or just created conditions where accidents happen easily, either way, they're responsible. 3 more days, then everyone knows. Then Hollis's world burns down. Good. Inside, Reeve called final instructions. The Brotherhood dispersed to watch assignments and evidence safekeeping. The careful orchestration of justice that couldn't come from courts, but might come from public exposure. Cormac finished his soda and stood. Let's go home, boy. Together they walked toward Reeve's bike. Toward the small house under the oak tree. Toward the empty bedroom that still smelled like smoke and sacrifice. 3 days until the world learned Thane Hollis's name. 72 hours until justice came riding on 2 wheels. The black sedan appeared on Maple Street at 6:47 a.m., 2 days before publication. 2 sleek, 2 deliberate, tinted windows reflecting early light like insect eyes. It idled at the corner 11 minutes before moving slowly past the Brennan house. Gunner's low growl woke Cormac, who'd fallen asleep at his desk, journal open to his father's final entries. He moved to the window and watched the sedan complete its surveillance pass before disappearing. 2 blocks away, Brick noted the license plate and radioed Reeve. We've got movement. Black sedan, government plates, doing recon. They know something's coming. Stay sharp. Hollis is testing our perimeter. They were watching. 17 bikers in rotating shifts, monitoring the Brennan house and every family on Declan's list. Kendra Vasquez had hired private security after her car tires were slashed and a dead rat left on her doorstep with a note, "Some stories aren't worth dying for." But pressure was building other ways. Judge Fenway issued a broad subpoena for all documents related to property disputes, a transparent attempt to seize evidence. 2 families received calls claiming tax audits were forthcoming. The local sheriff, who'd taken web development campaign contributions for 3 election cycles, announced an investigation into biker gang intimidation. Reeve watched it unfold with grim recognition. This was the playbook: isolate, intimidate, discredit. Make victims look like conspirators. Create enough noise that when the story broke, half the county would dismiss it as biker propaganda. They're good at this, Lydia observed. So are we. They think they're playing defense. They don't realize we're 3 moves ahead. He spread documents across the pool table. Backup copies of everything, plus new evidence. Bank records showing Fenway's offshore accounts. Property transfers revealing Web Development's true ownership. A shell company controlled by Hollis's wife. Text messages between Hollis and building inspectors. Kendra has all this, Brick asked. She has more, including sworn affidavits from a former county employee, testimony from a contractor paid to file false reports, and audio recordings of Hollis threatening families. Where'd you get those? Declan wasn't the only one who saw what was happening. He was just the only one willing to document it systematically. There's a whole network who've been keeping records, waiting for someone brave enough to use them. Cormac spoke up. My dad organized people. The journal says he started a group, people hurt by Hollis but too scared to fight alone. He called them the Watchmen. The Watchmen. He writes, met with Margaret from the county clerk's office tonight. She's been copying every suspicious foreclosure document for 2 years. Added her to the Watchmen network. We're up to 12 people now, all keeping evidence, waiting for the right moment. Reeve absorbed this. Your father built an insurgency. He built a case. He knew one person couldn't stop Hollis, but a dozen people with overlapping evidence, that was unstoppable. Then where are these watchmen? Because Dad was the leader. When he died, they scattered. But he lists them all here. Names, addresses, what evidence each person has. Over the next 36 hours, Reeve tracked down the watchman. Margaret wept when she heard Declan's name, then produced 3 boxes of copied documents. A retired building inspector provided testimony about falsifying reports. An accountant offered financial records showing systematic fraud. Each conversation followed the same pattern: initial suspicion, then relief someone was acting, then determination to see it through. "We thought we were alone," Margaret said. "Declan made us believe we could make a difference. Then he died and we thought it was over. It's not over, it's just beginning." By evening of day 2, Kendra had testimony from 11 new witnesses. Her article had grown to a multi-part investigative series. The State Attorney General opened a formal inquiry. The FBI quietly dispatched agents after reviewing Declan's evidence. But Hollis wasn't finished. That night, at 11:32 p.m., fire erupted at Vernon Trask's old garage, the luxury dealership that had replaced his life's work. By the time firefighters arrived, the building was fully engulfed. Millions in damage. The message: this is what happens to people who talk. Except Vernon had sold that property 14 months ago. The dealership belonged to Web Development now. Hollis had just burned down his own partner's business trying to intimidate a witness. Reeve received the call at midnight. He smiled coldly. Hollis panicked. He's making mistakes. The fire will be investigated. They'll find accelerant. Men like Hollis aren't careful when cornered. They're desperate, and desperation makes you sloppy. At the Brennan house, Cormac couldn't sleep. He stood at his window, watching Brick's Chevy down the street, seeing the protective perimeter his father's death had summoned. Tomorrow the story publishes. Tomorrow everyone knows what Dad found, what he died for. Gunner's tail thumped once. Agreement. Cormac opened his father's journal to the final entry. "If you're reading this, Cormac, it means I ran out of time. But here's what I need you to understand. Courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. You'll face choices where the easy path leads to comfort and the hard path leads to justice. I hope you choose justice, not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because living in a world where the corrupt win, that's no life at all. Be brave, son. Be honest. Be the man I know you can become. And if they come for our home, remember, truth is a weapon that never breaks. Use it. Make them answer. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I won't be there to see the man you become." Dad, Cormac closed the journal, vision blurred. "I'm trying, Dad. I'm trying to be brave like you." Outside, the black sedan made another pass, but this time 3 motorcycles followed, chrome catching streetlight, engines rumbling. The sedan accelerated, fleeing, pursued by shadows that wouldn't let it rest. 12 hours until publication. 12 hours until Thane Hollis's empire began to crumble. Tomorrow, Ridgemont County would learn what happened when a firefighter decided one man could make a difference and paid with his life. But tonight, an 11-year-old boy and his father's dog stood watch over evidence that would change everything, guarded by men who wore leather and lived by codes most people never understood. The countdown had begun. The clock read 5:58 a.m. when Kendra Vasquez's story went live, 2 minutes early due to server automation. By 6:03 a.m., it had been shared 400 times. By 6:15, local television stations scrambled to cover it. By 6:30, courthouse phones rang unanswered, every line jammed with angry citizens demanding answers. The headline, "Ridgemont Corruption." How a dead firefighter exposed a decade of theft below it. A photograph, Declan Brennan, in his firefighter's uniform beside Gunner, taken 3 months before his death. His expression tired but determined, a man who'd seen something wrong and couldn't unsee it. The article opened with Cormac's story, the boy who'd run to a biker bar to save his dog. inadvertently triggering an investigation revealing systematic corruption reaching from county inspectors to the judiciary. Then it widened. 15 families, 48 properties, millions in stolen equity, names, dates, bank records, audio recordings. Everything Declan had gathered, everything the watchman preserved, laid out in meticulous detail that defied denial. At 6:42 a.m., Thane Hollis's phone rang. He'd been awake already, dressed in his bureaucratic armor. The first call came from Commissioner Webb. "What the hell is this? I'm named. My company is named. The FBI is—" "Calm down. It's one reporter making wild accusations based on documents, audio recordings, 15 people on record." Webb's voice climbed toward panic. "They've got bank records showing offshore accounts." Margaret Finch testified. She worked the clerk's office 20 years. Her testimony alone will prove what? That we enforced legitimate county codes. Except the properties weren't unsafe, Thane. The inspections were fabricated, and now there's a dead firefighter who documented everything, and his kid is the face of this story. And I'm calling my lawyer. I'm not going down for this. The second call, Judge Fenway, voice tight with rage. "You said Brennan's evidence died with him. You said the family wouldn't fight. They weren't supposed to. How was I supposed to know he'd buried everything like some spy? How was I supposed to know a biker gang would? A gang didn't do this. A systematic investigation did. And now the FBI's involved. Do you understand what that means? It means we lawyer up and ride it out. We deny everything. Claim Brennan was unstable, grief-stricken. Except there are 15 families corroborating. Except there's audio of you threatening property owners. Except—" Fenway's voice dropped cold. "I'm resigning today, citing health reasons. And I'm cooperating with federal investigators in exchange for immunity. You should do the same." The line went dead. By 7:00 a.m., news trucks lined the courthouse. By 7:30, protesters gathered, many holding signs with Declan's photograph. By 8:00, the state attorney general announced a full investigation. At 8:15, 2 FBI agents knocked on Thane Hollis's door. At the Brennan house, Cormac woke to his grandmother crying. Not grief, relief. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, reading Kendra's article. "They know. Everyone knows. Declan. Oh, Declan, they finally know what you did." Cormac joined her, seeing his father's face in the photograph, seeing their home described as the target of an attempted seizure that ultimately exposed the corruption, seeing Gunnar mentioned as the service dog whose protection sparked the investigation. "Dad's famous," Cormac said quietly. "Dad's vindicated. There's a difference." Reeve arrived at 8:30 with coffee and 3 different newspapers, all running variants of Kendra's story. It's everywhere. Regional papers, state outlets, even national sites. The courthouse is surrounded. Hollis is being questioned by FBI. Web Development's offices were raided. "Is it over?" Cormac asked. "The exposure phase is over. Now comes legal, investigations, indictments, trials. That'll take months, maybe years. But the important part, making sure people know what happened, making sure your father's sacrifice wasn't in vain, that's done." He looked at Cormac. "Your dad would be proud." By noon, Webb resigned. By 2:00 p.m., Fenway announced retirement and cooperation with federal authorities. By 4:00 p.m., Thane Hollis was arrested on charges of fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Television coverage showed him led from his home in handcuffs, face pale, authorities stripped by evidence a dead firefighter had buried beneath an oak tree. Vernon Trask watched and wept. Margaret Finch saw it and quietly packed her desk, conscience finally clear. 15 families watched justice arrive 14 months too late to save homes, but just in time to save dignity. At the Iron Barrel that evening, Reeve raised a glass to Declan's photograph, now pinned beside patches and road maps. to the firefighter who fought a different kind of fire, to the man who proved one person can change everything. "To Declan!" the brotherhood echoed. Cormac stood among them, Gunnar at his side, finally understanding what his father had known. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and fighting anyway. It's about leaving evidence in the ground and trusting someone will dig it up. It's about believing truth, once unleashed, becomes unstoppable. The story had broken, the corrupt had fallen, and in a small house on Maple Street, a boy and his dog stood as living proof that even when heroes don't survive, causes still win. The legal machinery ground forward with bureaucratic inevitability. Federal prosecutors built their case methodically, grand juries, indictments, motions. Hollis hired expensive lawyers attempting every delay tactic, but Declan's evidence was airtight. The thumb drive alone contained enough to secure convictions. The Watchman testimony sealed it. 3 months after the story broke, Hollis pled guilty to 14 counts of fraud and corruption. Webb followed 2 weeks later. Judge Fenway's cooperation earned reduced charges, but his legal career ended in disgrace. The county appointed special administrators to review every foreclosure from the past decade. Cormac testified at the sentencing hearing before Judge Helena Marsh, brought in from another district for impartiality. His voice steady as he described his father's final months, the sacrifice Declan made, the evidence buried. "My dad believed truth mattered more than safety." He was right. Hollis received 8 years, Webb got 6, Fenway 3 years probation and permanent disbarment. The sentences seemed inadequate compared to damage done, but symbolic victory mattered. Corruption had been named, exposed, punished. Financial restitution proved more complicated. Webb's development company dissolved, assets liquidated. Victims received compensation, partial, imperfect, but something. Vernon Trask got enough to open a small repair shop. Other families used settlements to pay debts, start over, survive. The Brennan house remained untouched. County officials quietly withdrew all claims. Nola kept the home her son died protecting. Cormac kept Gunnar. Beneath the oak tree, they planted a memorial stone. Declan Brennan, firefighter, father, truth-seeker. Reeve and the Brotherhood became unexpected heroes. Local media praised their protection of witnesses, role in exposing corruption. The club received dozens of calls from people in other counties, other states, describing similar schemes. "We're not investigators," Reeve told one caller. "We're just people who decided enough was enough." But the precedent was set. When institutional justice fails, communities must create their own. Declan Brennan proved it was possible. The Brotherhood proved it was sustainable. 6 months after Hollis's arrest, Kendra Vasquez won a regional journalism award. She donated prize money to a legal defense fund for property fraud victims. "This story chose me, but Declan Brennan lived it. Cormac Brennan finished it, and a community proved justice doesn't require badges, just courage." At the ceremony, Cormac sat beside Nola and Gunnar. The dog wore his service vest, calm and dignified. When Kendra mentioned Declan's name, the room applauded. Cormac felt the weight, pride mixed with grief, victory shadowed by loss. "Your father would be so proud," Nola whispered. "I just wish he was here." "He is, baby, in every word of that story, in every person who came forward, in you. That's how the good ones stay alive, through what they inspire." The case officially closed 9 months after it began. Final reports documented 48 properties, 17 million in stolen equity, systematic corruption spanning 12 years. Reforms followed. Independent property inspections, public foreclosure reviews, whistleblower protections. Ridgemont wouldn't forget easily. And if you've followed this journey, if this story resonated, we invite you to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like Declan's deserve to be remembered. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. Ridgemont citizens learned to question authority, demand accountability, recognize that power unchecked inevitably corrupts. Declan's investigation became required reading in local schools, a case study in civic courage and moral responsibility. Cormac grew into adolescence carrying his father's legacy. He excelled in school, particularly history and civics, subjects that took on new meaning. Teachers noted his unusual maturity, thoughtful questions about justice and institutional accountability. On the first anniversary of Declan's death, the county held a memorial service. Fire stations across Idaho sent representatives. Reeves' entire chapter attended. The watchmen gathered publicly for the first time. They dedicated a plaque at the courthouse in memory of Declan Brennan, who showed us that one person can make a difference. Cormac stood beside it with Gunnar, accepting condolences and gratitude from strangers whose homes had been saved by his father's investigation. Some thanked him directly, others simply shook his hand, conveying what words couldn't. That his father's death had not been meaningless, that sacrifice echoes through communities, that truth, once planted, grows unstoppable. That evening, at the Iron Barrel, Reeve approached Cormac with a gift, a leather vest, sized for a boy, with a patch stitched across the back, junior member, Iron Promise. "I'm not a biker," Cormac said. "No, but your family. You proved that the day you walked through our door. This vest means you're always welcome, always protected, always part of this brotherhood. When you're old enough to ride, we'll teach you. Until then, you wear this as a reminder. You're not alone." Cormac held the vest, feeling its weight, understanding its significance. His father had built one family, the Watchmen. The brotherhood offered another. Both formed around shared values: loyalty, truth, justice, courage. "Thank you. Thank your father. He started this. We're just keeping the promise he made, to protect what matters, to fight corruption, to stand with the vulnerable against the powerful." As the year closed, Ridgemont settled into its new normal. Hollis's name became synonymous with corruption, Declan's with courage, and Cormac Brennan, 11 years old, fatherless but not alone, became living proof that even when heroes fall, their causes prevail. Gunnar aged gracefully, muzzle growing whiter, pace slower, but loyalty unchanging. He remained Cormac's constant companion, guardian of a promise made before the boy was born, that Declan's son would be protected, loved, and raised to understand some fights are worth everything. The story was complete, but the legacy had just begun. News of Ridgemont's case spread beyond Idaho. Investigative journalists from Oregon, Montana, and Washington reached out to Kendra about methodology, evidence preservation, witness protection. 3 similar investigations launched within the year, each citing Declan's documentation techniques as a blueprint. In Tacoma, a postal worker documented housing fraud. In Missoula, a teacher compiled school board corruption evidence. In Portland, a retired cop exposed police property seizure schemes. All credited the Ridgemont case as inspiration, proof that ordinary citizens armed with documentation could challenge institutional power. Cormac received letters, some from children who'd lost parents to injustice, others from adults who found courage in his story. A veteran wrote, "Your father reminded me why I served, to protect people who can't protect themselves. Thank you for finishing his mission." A widowed mother in Oregon sent photos of her 2 daughters beside their home. Saved from foreclosure after Declan's case inspired her to investigate county inspection practices. She'd found similar corruption, exposed it using his methods, preserved her family's security. "Your father's legacy saved my children's home. Please tell him thank you." "I can't tell him," Cormac said, holding the letter. "He's gone." "Then tell yourself," Nola replied gently, "because that legacy, that ripple of courage, started with Declan, but continues through you. Every time someone reads your story and finds strength, your father lives again. The Brotherhood expanded their mission. Reeve formalized what had been informal: witness protection, evidence gathering, community organizing against institutional corruption. They called it the Iron Promise Initiative, named for their commitment to stand with those facing powerful predators. Other motorcycle clubs joined. Veterans organizations volunteered. Lawyers offered pro bono services. A network formed, imperfect, sometimes chaotic, but united by shared principles: transparency, accountability, justice for those society overlooked. 18 months after Hollis's conviction, a national documentary crew arrived in Ridgemont. They interviewed Cormac, Nola, the Watchman, the families Declan saved. The resulting film, Buried Truth, the Declan Brennan story, premiered at a film festival and later aired on cable networks. Cormac watched himself on screen, 12 years old now, describing his father's sacrifice, saw Gunner, grey and dignified, lying beside him, heard Reeve explain the Brotherhood's role, watched Vernon weep recounting his garage's theft, saw the oak tree where everything had been buried. The documentary ended with the memorial plaque footage, then cut to Cormac's face. "My dad used to say courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified." He was terrified. He knew investigating Hollis was dangerous, but he did it anyway because some things matter more than safety. Truth matters. Justice matters. Standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves, that matters most. The film sparked national conversation. Congressional hearings examined property seizure laws. State legislatures passed whistleblower protections. Local governments reviewed foreclosure procedures. Declan's name appeared in legal briefs, academic papers, reform proposals. But for Cormac, the most meaningful change was personal. He no longer woke screaming from nightmares about fire. He no longer felt crushing weight of his father's absence every moment. Grief remained, would always remain, but had transformed into purpose. He joined his school's debate team, arguing cases about justice and governmental accountability with passion teachers found remarkable. He volunteered at a legal aid office, helping families understand rights. He trained with Gunner, learning service dog protocols, preparing to eventually work with veterans suffering PTSD. "Your father would be so proud," Lydia told him one afternoon. "I'm just doing what he taught me." Which is exactly why he'd be proud. You didn't let his death break you. You let it build you. On Cormac's 13th birthday, Reeve presented him with a motorcycle helmet, custom painted with Declan's firefighter badge number. 3 more years until you can legally ride. But when that day comes, you'll have a bike waiting. Your father rode with us in spirit. You'll ride with us in truth. Cormac held the helmet, imagining the freedom and responsibility of riding those northern roads his father loved. "Will you teach me?" "Brother, it would be my honor." The Brotherhood had become his extended family, rough, loyal, uncompromising in values. They attended school events, celebrated achievements, provided mentorship. They weren't replacements for Declan. Nothing could replace him. But they were proof family isn't only blood. It's choice, commitment, shared values. Gunner aged gracefully. Working days numbered, but purpose fulfilled. He'd protected Cormac through worst grief, guided him to help, stayed loyal when everything fell apart. On quiet evenings, Cormac would sit beside the old dog and whisper stories about his father, keeping Declan alive through memory, through words, through continuing fight for justice. 2 years after the case closed, Ridgemont elected a new commissioner, a former teacher active in reform movements Declan's investigation sparked. Her first act was establishing the Brennan Accountability Office, a citizen oversight board reviewing all major county decisions. Cormac attended the opening ceremony. The commissioner shook his hand. "Your father changed this county. We're going to make sure that change lasts." "And thank you. But it's not about one person changing things. It's about all of us refusing to accept corruption as normal. Wise words from a young man. Not my words, my dad's. I'm just making sure people remember them. And they did remember. Ridgemont became a case study in how communities fight institutional corruption. Declan Brennan's methods, systematic documentation, network building, evidence preservation were taught in journalism schools and community organizing workshops. His sacrifice became a rallying cry. One person can make a difference, but communities make change permanent. The ripple effect continued spreading, county by county, state by state, story by story. Each investigation cited Ridgemont. Each reform referenced Declan's techniques. Each victory honored his memory by proving truth, properly documented and courageously shared, remains stronger than corruption. And in a small house beneath an oak tree, a teenage boy studied his father's journal each night, learning not just what Declan had done, but why. Learning justice isn't automatic. It's built by people who refuse to accept injustice. That courage isn't fearlessness. It's fear transformed into action. That legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you inspire others to continue. Cormac Brennan, son of a firefighter, protected by outlaws, raised by a grandmother who'd lost everything but refused to be broken, he carried forward the promise his father had buried, that truth would prevail, that justice would come, that one person's courage could light fires that burned away corruption's darkness. The story was far from over. It was just beginning. 5 years after Thane Hollis's conviction, Cormac Brennan stood at his high school graduation, valedictorian of Ridgemont High's class of 2030. His speech eschewed typical platitudes. Instead, he spoke about responsibility, accountability, and the debt every generation owes those who fought before them. "My father, Declan Brennan, died when I was 10, he began, voice steady. He died fighting corruption, not with weapons, but with documentation, truth, and unwavering commitment to justice. He taught me courage isn't about being unafraid, it's about being terrified and acting anyway." He spoke about the Watchmen, the brotherhood, the community that formed around shared values. About Vernon Trask, who rebuilt his garage at 67 and now taught mechanics to troubled teens. About Margaret Finch, who helped establish citizen oversight boards in 3 counties. About Kendra Vasquez, whose investigative work exposed corruption in 7 states. These people didn't wait for heroes to save them. They became the heroes their communities needed. And that's my challenge to our graduating class. Don't wait for someone else to fix what's broken. Document injustice, organize communities, fight corruption wherever you find it. One person started change in Ridgemont, but it took all of us to make it last. The audience rose in standing ovation. Nola wept proudly. Reeve, greyer now, stood among bikers who'd come to watch their kid graduate. Even Gunnar, elderly and moving stiffly, attended with his service vest. After graduation, Cormac faced choices. Full scholarship offers from 6 universities, internship opportunities with civil rights organizations, job offers from investigative journalism outlets. He chose instead to spend a gap year working with the Iron Promise Initiative, traveling to communities facing similar corruption, teaching Declan's documentation methods, helping organize resistance. "You sure about this?" Reeve asked. "College can wait, but opportunities will still be there. Right now, people need help." Dad didn't wait for the perfect time. He acted when action was needed. "I'm doing the same." His first case took him to a farming community in eastern Washington, where corporate interests were seizing family land through environmental code violations. Cormac recognized the pattern immediately. The same tactics Hollis had used, adapted for agricultural context. He taught farmers to document everything, organized community meetings, connected them with sympathetic lawyers. 3 months later, the seizures stopped. An investigation revealed the environmental violations were fabricated. the corporate entity behind them faced federal charges, and Cormac Brennan, 18 years old, became known as the kid who finished his father's work. But he rejected hero worship. "I'm not special. I just pay attention. I document. I organize. Anyone can do this. That's the point. Anyone can fight corruption if they're willing to work systematically and refuse to be intimidated." He traveled to Montana, Oregon, Nevada, each stop adding to his education in how power corrupts and communities resist. He learned investigation techniques from retired FBI agents, studied constitutional law with civil rights attorneys, trained in conflict de-escalation with community organizers, and everywhere he went, Gunnar accompanied him. The old dog had become something of a mascot, the service animal who'd stayed loyal through his handler's death, who'd guided an 11-year-old boy to help, who'd witnessed justice prevail. When Gunnar finally passed at age 14, memorial services were held across 3 states. His ashes were scattered beneath the oak tree in Ridgemont, joining the earth that had hidden Declan's evidence. "End of an era," Reeves said at the ceremony. "Beginning of another," Cormac replied. "Gunnar did his job. He protected me until I could protect myself. Now I carry both their legacies forward." At 19, Cormac enrolled at Georgetown University, studying political science and investigative journalism, but he returned to Ridgemont every summer, working with the initiative, mentoring younger activists, keeping his father's techniques alive and evolving. By 21, he'd helped expose corruption in 12 counties across 7 states. By 23, he'd co-authored a book, Systematic Justice: How to Document and Defeat Local Corruption, part memoir, part how-to guide, dedicated to Declan Brennan and every ordinary citizen who became extraordinary through their refusal to accept injustice. The book became required reading for community organizing courses. Journalists cited it, activists studied it, and most importantly, everyday people used it. Teachers, postal workers, veterans, parents, anyone who saw wrong and decided to fight back. Thane Hollis, released from prison after serving 5 years, gave one interview. Asked about Declan Brennan's legacy, he said bitterly, "One man destroyed my life." Cormac, shown the quote, responded publicly, "No, one man exposed crimes that destroyed families. There's a difference, and if documenting theft makes me my father's son, I'm proud to carry that title." Hollis faded into obscurity, disgraced and unemployable. Judge Fenway died of a heart attack 2 years post-conviction, his legal legacy tarnished permanently. Webb's development empire collapsed, his name toxic in business circles. By 25, Cormac had established the Brennan Foundation, non-profit dedicated to teaching anti-corruption tactics, providing legal support for whistleblowers, preserving his father's methods for future generations. Reeves served on the board. Vernon Trask managed the technical training program. Kendra Vasquez directed media relations. "Your father would be beyond proud," Nola told him during the Foundation's launch. She was 73 now, still sharp, still strong, still living in the house Declan had died protecting. "I just wish he'd seen this." "He does, baby. Every day someone uses his methods to fight back. He sees it. Every time corruption falls because someone refused to stay silent, he sees it. That's immortality, not being remembered but continuing to change the world long after you're gone." Cormac looked at the memorial stone beneath the oak tree, at his father's name carved in granite. "I'm just getting started. There are 1,000 Ridgemonts out there, 1,000 Hollises, 1,000 families waiting for someone to teach them how to fight back. Dad showed us the way. Now it's our job to make sure his path stays lit." The next generation had arrived, and they rode on 2 wheels, carrying leather-bound journals, pursuing justice with the same relentless determination that had buried evidence beneath an oak tree and trusted that someday someone would dig it up. 20 years after Thane Hollis's arrest, Ridgemont County stood as proof that communities could heal, that reform could last, that one person's courage could echo through decades. The county had become a pilgrimage site for activists. People came to see the oak tree, visit the memorial plaque, meet the families whose testimonies had changed everything. Cormac Brennan, now 31, returned often. He'd built a distinguished career. Investigative journalist, corruption specialist, author of 3 books, advisor to state attorneys general. But Ridgemont remained home, the place where everything began, where his father had died, where a brotherhood of bikers had taught him that family isn't blood but choice. Nola had passed 2 years prior, peacefully in her sleep, in the house she'd fought to keep. She'd lived long enough to see corruption prosecuted, justice prevail, and her grandson become the man Declan had hoped he'd be. Her final words to Cormac: "You made us proud, both of us. Never forget, courage is contagious. Your father caught it from someone, passed it to you, and you've spread it to thousands. That's how the good ones live forever." The house now served as the Brennan Foundation's headquarters. Offices where once there'd been a living room, a library where once there'd been a kitchen, meeting spaces where strategies were planned, evidence compiled, communities organized. But beneath the oak tree, nothing had changed. The memorial stone remained. Declan Brennan, firefighter, father, truth seeker. Courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. Visitors left flowers. Some left notes thanking Declan for inspiration. Others left documentation of their own fights against corruption. A growing archive of citizen resistance, each case building on methods Declan had pioneered. On the 20th anniversary of his father's death, Cormac organized a symposium. Systematic Justice in the Digital Age. Activists from 30 states attended. Journalists, lawyers, community organizers, reformed whistleblowers, all gathered in Ridgemont to honor Declan's legacy and discuss evolving tactics. Reeve gave the opening speech. He was 65 now, retired from active riding but still wearing his leather vest. 20 years ago, an 11-year-old kid ran into my bar asking for help. I almost turned him away. Too risky, too complicated, too much exposure for the club. But something stopped me. Maybe his eyes, maybe his desperation, maybe the ghost of every time I didn't help when I should have. He paused, scanning the audience. That kid, Cormac Brennan, he didn't just need help saving a dog. He needed help finishing his father's mission. And in helping him, we discovered our own mission, standing with the vulnerable against the powerful, protecting truth-tellers, making sure courage doesn't die alone. We became better because a scared boy trusted us with his father's legacy. Justice doesn't come from institutions. It comes from communities deciding enough is enough. The symposium covered technical topics, encryption for whistleblowers, chain of custody protocols, legal protections, media strategy. But it also addressed something deeper. How to maintain courage when corruption seems overwhelming, how to organize when authorities are compromised, how to persist when justice moves slower than suffering. Cormac's keynote came final day. He stood before the audience and spoke not as an expert, but as a son still processing his father's sacrifice. I was 10 when my dad died. Too young to understand corruption, too young to appreciate courage, too young for any of this. But I learned something crucial. You're never too young for truth, never too small to matter, never too ordinary to change the world. My father was a firefighter, not a detective, but he saw wrong and documented it, systematically, carefully, with the patience of someone who knew truth compounds over time. He displayed Declan's journal, preserved now in a climate-controlled case. This journal represents 18 months of investigation, notes on conversations, photographs of fabricated reports, documentation of suspicious patterns. It seems like nothing, just one man's observations. But combined with testimony from the watchmen, Corroboration from victims and strategic exposure through sympathetic media, it became unstoppable. Cormac looked directly at the younger activists. You think you're too small to matter. You think corruption is too big to fight. My father thought that too. I found entries where he doubted, where he considered quitting, where he wondered if one person could possibly make a difference. But he kept going, kept documenting, kept building a case. And when he died, when corruption thought it had won, his evidence survived, his network persisted, his courage multiplied through everyone he'd inspired. The room fell silent. 20 years since my father was killed trying to protect his community, and in those 20 years, his methods have helped expose corruption in 43 states. His documentation techniques are taught in journalism schools. His network model is used by activists worldwide. And most importantly, 1,500 families have kept their homes, their businesses, their dignity because someone taught them how to fight back systematically. He closed the journal reverently. My father died. But his ideas, his methods, his courage, his refusal to accept injustice, those are immortal. They live in every community that organizes, every whistleblower who documents, every ordinary person who decides they're extraordinary enough to demand justice. The ovation lasted 5 minutes. Strangers embraced. A woman from Texas approached. Your father's journal saved my family's ranch. The template he created, we used it to document illegal seizures, exposed a corruption ring in 3 counties. My kids still have their heritage because your dad had courage 20 years ago. That evening, Cormac sat beneath the oak tree as sunset painted Idaho sky in orange and purple. He thought about his father, the man he barely remembered, whose face he knew mainly from photographs, whose voice existed only in one video recording. Yet Declan Brennan felt more present than many living people. We did it, Dad, he whispered to the memorial stone. We made them pay. We changed the system. We made sure you didn't die for nothing. A motorcycle approached, younger Brotherhood members riding Reeves' legacy forward. They nodded respectfully, maintaining the watch that had never ended. 20 years, and bikers still protected the Brennan property. Cormac smiled. His father had created one family, the Watchmen. The Brotherhood had offered another. The Foundation had built a third. And all 3 existed because one firefighter had decided truth mattered more than safety, justice mattered more than comfort, and fighting corruption was worth dying for. The sun dipped below mountains, stars emerged, the same stars that had witnessed Declan burying evidence, the same stars that had watched a boy run to strangers for help, the same stars that now looked down on a movement that had grown beyond one man, one county, one case. 20 years of justice, 20 years of courage multiplying through communities. 20 years of ordinary people learning they were extraordinary enough to demand accountability, and it all traced back to here. A modest house, an oak tree, a buried box of evidence, and a firefighter who'd understood that truth, properly documented, strategically shared, courageously defended, could outlive the person who discovered it. Cormac stood, touching his father's name carved in stone. Thank you for showing me courage, for teaching me justice, for proving one person can change everything. He walked toward the house, now headquarters for ongoing fights against corruption worldwide. Inside, young activists planned campaigns. Lawyers reviewed evidence. Journalists drafted exposés. The work continued, endless and necessary, each case building on methods Declan had pioneered. The story hadn't ended. It had multiplied. 20 years, thousands of activists, hundreds of exposed corruption rings, countless families saved from institutional theft, and at the center, always at the center, a firefighter's journal, a buried box of evidence, and the simple truth that courage, once ignited, never dies. It only spreads. As night fell over Ridgemont County, lights glowed in the Brennan Foundation offices. Work continued, justice advanced, and somewhere in the darkness, the spirit of Declan Brennan looked on with satisfaction. Not at being remembered, but at being useful long after death, at having planted seeds that grew into forests of resistance, at having proved that ordinary courage, systematically applied, can defeat extraordinary corruption. The legacy was secure, the promise was kept, the fight continued, and in that continuation, that endless, necessary, noble fight for truth and justice, Declan Brennan lived on, more powerful in death than he'd ever been in life. Thank you for following Cormac and Declan's journey through these 20 years. Their story reminds us that courage is contagious, that documentation defeats corruption, and that one person's sacrifice can inspire thousands to stand up and fight back. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to this channel and sharing it with others who need to know that justice is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible, when ordinary people find extraordinary courage. Until next time, stay brave, document truth, and never accept corruption as normal.